Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
We want to thank our show sponsor, the University of Alaska. You can check them out at empower.alaska.edu. Thank you so much for the University of Alaska for sponsoring the Must Read Alaska Show. Welcome, everybody, to the Must Read Alaska Show. I'm your host, John Quick, coming to you live from somewhere in Alaska. And I am actually in the beautiful metropolis of Homer, Alaska today, one of my favorite cities. I am looking over Ketchimek Bay. And this view, it doesn't get much better than this, folks. I want to thank everybody who listens, watches, and reads Must Read Alaska. We do this to give you a conservative slice of the news here in Alaska. And if you want to help keep the lights on here at Must Read Alaska, all you got to do is go to mustreadalaska.com. On the right-hand side there's a little donate button. $5, $10, $100. Every little penny helps keep the lights on here. And if you already do that, we want to thank you for doing that. That's very amazing of you to help contribute to Must Read Alaska. Without further ado, we have a very special guest today, former mayor of the city of Fairbanks, former city council member of the city of Fairbanks. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show, former mayor Jim Matherly.
Well, John, your name sounds too much like John Wick, and I just and I love the John Wick movies. So I have a soft place in my heart for you and Must Read Alaska.
Well, man, I wish I was about as cool as that. I'll take that compliment any day of the week. So, Jim, you were on the city council and or mayor for over 10 years in the city of Fairbanks. Talk to me about some of your kind of most favorite accomplishments or moments. You got to have a handful of them, is my guess.
You know, I do. And first of all, thanks, John, for having me on the show. And I've read and listened to, Must Read for a long time. And yeah, do support them, folks, if you're listening. We need all sides of political discourse. And that's what MSR does. MRA, excuse me.
There we go.
I don't know what I'm thinking of, the Midnight Sun Run here in Fairbanks. Anyway, yeah, I was elected in 2010 and I served all the way to 2022. And it took 12 of the best years of my life. And while I was on the city council, I learned a lot, union contracts, road upgrades. Some of the things I thought we accomplished good when I was on the council had to do with the homeless population, the opioid crisis. And then when I ended up getting elected mayor in 2016, I took it to another level. Opioids they infect a few of my family members, and that's a pretty public message I give up here. My daughter primarily, and she was homeless as well. So I took it under my wing to really focus on homelessness and opioids. And what we did, we brought on a housing homeless coordinator for the city that is still in effect today, that is working with all the homeless shelters and places and beds to, sleep on. And that's going full speed. It's too bad we have to have that, but I'm glad we do. And then I was on the governor's opioid task force, brought the message to Fairbanks all the time about, opioids are an Alaskan issue and how drugs are tearing apart families, and not just here, but out in the villages and the big cities. It reaches everything. So those were two that stand out to me. And there was plenty others, like you said. We worked hard on, the Polaris building. We tried to bring some economic development to Fairbanks, which is why I worked closely with those groups while I was leading the city. But it was an amazing 12 years. I really missed it a lot, actually.
You had a good run.
Yeah, it was a good run. And if you look at, well, I won't mention it, but if you look at other stories around the state, maybe about other leaders who have certain issues, I look back with fondness and pride that I never had.
One of the things that I think is unique about you is that you also kept kind of your foot into the door of the things that you care about in life, which, you love music, you like doing weddings and those kinds of things. And if somebody were to ever cruise on your Facebook, they would see that you find great joy in performing wedding ceremonies. You've probably done the most wedding ceremonies out of any mayor in the history of Alaska.
Well, I'm probably DJ'd the most proms and weddings and other events than any other mayor. No, when you look at my page, I'm pretty active on, I call it unsocial media much of the time, but quite honestly, it helps all of us. It helps you, it helps me. So I control my own narrative. I'm not down on my page. I'm not really uber political on my page. I share snippets every now and then. Most of the time it's about music and my kids, about the community. And that's by design. And then when I was mayor, I monitored every neighborhood Facebook page on purpose. And then I would jump in with answers to things, clarifications, and people would just be amazed at the amount of reaching out I would do. And it's really paid off for me up here anyway.
So you have a new role with the governor and the governor's office. I'm probably going to botch this. So basically you're his kind of representative in Fairbanks. If you probably speak at meetings and handle tons of questions and interact with the community. Talk to us about your new role with the governor's office.
Yeah, no, you didn't botch that at all. You pretty much nailed it. I'm basically mayor without being elected. After
I love it.
After I left the city, and I ran for that state Senate seat like many others before me. I was Kawasaki'd, which I say lightly.
You were Kawasaki'd, I love it.
Well, he and I we're friends, and we had a really good campaign and I love running for office anyway, but it wasn't my time for the Senate. So I got a call from the governor's chief of staff and said, hey, you know what, would you mind considering coming on board as the regional director for the interior? Tammy Wilson had done it, but she was doing double duty. She works on OCS a lot, and then she was doing this as well. They hadn't had a full-time one in a couple of years. And they said, you were elected, your city, your community. We just want you immersed in Fairbanks and then keep us up to date on things. And I'm like, wow, that's what I do already without even you asking me to do.
I'm already doing that. I did that yesterday.
I just did it a couple hours ago. Yeah. So my job is exactly how you described. There's some nuances, though, that I have to learn to hold back from because I'm not in a decision-making role anymore. And that's what I was for years. It's been tough for me to keep my mouth shut. It's been tough for me to not make decisions or anything because my job is to take the governor's message to the interior. That's it. And so I go speak at groups. If they really get deep on issues, sometimes I have to say, I will research that, or the governor is this, and I can't go too deep, especially while they're being discussed. So I've had to learn how to swim those waters, but I'm having a ball doing it, and I just really enjoy it.
Yeah, before when you're a mayor, you're the boss kind of. You could speak on behalf of the city essentially and be pretty confident that you represent the city. And now you have a different role where it's probably a little bit of a bigger role. And, I think the governor was perfect in selecting you because everybody that I've ever talked to has really enjoyed being around you. And they loved when you were the city of Fairbanks mayor. And so congratulations on your new role.
Well, thanks, John, very, very much. I was really flattered to even be asked to serve in this capacity, and the beauty of it is I'm still, involved in political life. I'm still involved with the community, and it was almost a seamless thing. I kept my face out there. In fact, some people still message me, hey, Mayor, what's going on over here? It's funny how some people don't read the memo necessarily. And yeah,
there's people that probably still think you're the mayor.
Oh yeah, it happens all the time. Well, and that's because I was such a visual mayor, so involved.
Yeah.
And that was just how I am. And the governor knows that. And the governor took me aside and said, look, I trust you. I trust him. I told him I will never embarrass you. I don't want to talk out of turn. I want to do the right thing for you and your message and for your administration. It's really important to me that I represent well. I represented the city to the best of my ability. And if people didn't like me or disagreed with me, it was political. It was never personal. And that's fine by me because not everyone's going to agree with me politically.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing the same thing representing Governor Dunleavy and his administration, and Lieutenant Governor Dahlstrom, who's tremendous. And she's a very active, involved lieutenant governor, which I think is great.
So tell us about some of the things that are important to not only just people in Fairbanks, but the interior now that you represent. What are you hearing on the street? What are the things that are really important to these folks?
30 years from now, I think local elected officials will hear much of the same concerns. Like I think 20 years from now on a national level, we'll always hear about, the Middle East and all these other things that never seem to go away. In the interior, it's the price of fuel, it's the price of, heating your home, it's the price of gas, electricity. Those are big things. There's some microscopes under education right now in schools, and those kind of stories, as you know, John, ebb and flow with time. Things kind of ramp up and then they get addressed and they kind of ramp down a little bit. So you're seeing that. Opioids and homelessness are still on the radar of many people up here in Fairbanks. I've heard a lot of discussion about ranked choice voting just because that's a fairly new concept. And people are looking at that on a statewide level. In the interior, I think people are concerned about the cost of heat and the cost of living up here. And more recently, the Man Show Mine, the ore haul, has garnered a lot of attention exclusively to the interior. Some people concerned, others like, yay, bring on the jobs. So I hear a lot of that as well. And also, one more thing I'll add is, the SNAP benefits and those kinds of things, and the behind the schedule, the state's been on some of those, that's statewide, but also in the interior, but they're catching up. They're doing their best, that kind of thing.
So there's going to be folks that listen to this that live in Canada or Australia or the UK. Paint them a picture of somebody in the interior goes to buy a gallon of gas or a gallon of milk. How expensive is it?
Well, when I bought my last gallon of milk, it was $4.80. And then I just filled up my gas tank yesterday. It was $5.04.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's Chevron. I'm kind of a weird habit guy. I buy pretty much Chevron for everything, but I know there's other gas stations that go down to, $4.10. I get all that. But my dad drilled into me, good gas. And it's just something I do. But that's how much you pay for gas. So my whole tank to fill up is, $90. And that's not cheap, and for those that can afford it and have the resources, it's not quite as difficult. But for folks, who are struggling financially, that's a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
And I pay, $8. I buy a special kind of bread, and it's like $8 for a loaf of this bread. But you can
do you buy the Dave's bread? I love Dave's bread.
Yeah, you know what? I go to Costco quite a bit, and I'll buy a double loaf of that, put one in the freezer. I try to. Yeah, it is really good bread, and there's good variety. But that's some of the prices up here, and with more natural gas flowing and more other things, they're hoping to bring prices down. But every couple of years or every year, different people are elected, and you have stop and starts and and starts and delays on projects. I wish every project could come to full fruition every time you start it. But that's just not the reality of it. And it takes time. It can be frustrating.
Recently, I think I saw that you spoke at a young entrepreneurs or young professional event. Talk to me a little bit about how important it is for the generation below us, or a couple generations below us, to get involved in the politics or get involved in their community, even because sooner or later, we're going to need that next generation to come up. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I'm really glad you're bringing that up. I had a wonderful time speaking at the YPC event, Young Professionals Council. And it's hard for me to believe that I'm addressing younger people. I was that age, and I just turned 60 this year. So here I am 60, and I'm talking to folks 20, 25, 30, 35, and I can relay information. So it was kind of weird for me to be in that role. However, the message I was talking about was conflict resolution. And I just said, listen, politics is a incredibly fun thing to be involved in. I told them, don't let the stuff online shape how you feel about politics if you can. Remember, you're going to hear all the negative stuff, and it's terrible how we're stereotyped politicians. And there was a guy who sold cars in my class. He said the same thing about my profession and realtors and on and on. I just don't live in a world where 51% and higher are bad. I go the other route. That's my optimism, John, and that's just how I feel about it. So I talked about conflict resolution, sitting down, talking to people face to face. And I told them, we need you to be the next voices for our community. And the message I gave to them more than any other, I said, if you think of politics as a rubber band, and you've got way over here on the right that are off the charts, and you have way over here on the left that are off the charts, there's plenty on both ends. And all they do is stretch that rubber band, and they never talk. Either you got to come together and ease the tension on that rubber band, or it's going to snap. I told them, I said, more people, the majority of people in the country and here in Alaska and in Fairbanks dwell near the middle. And really radical people don't make good elected officials because they just are so singular in their vision. And you got to open up your blinders. You just don't have a choice, John. Nothing gets done if you're either way over here or way over there. And they just throw rocks. And those of us near the middle, whether you're right or left, we just dodge those rocks. And I saw a lot of nodding heads in the group. And I said, listen, a lot of people don't agree with me politically, but you can come talk to me. But if you shut me down or you get angry with me, and here's one example I gave really quick. I said, if John came to me and said, Mayor, when I was mayor, I said, Mayor, do these 5 things, and I would really appreciate these 5 things. And I said, listen, I can't do all 5. How about 3 of them? No. It's got to be all 5, or you're going to get recalled, and I hate you. And
it's got to be done exactly every 5-1. Is it got to be done exactly how I want?
Listen, all or nothing. All or nothing is killing political discourse. Yeah. All or nothing. We got to get away from that and look for ways to work on those 2 or 3 things that you want, and then work on me for the other 2 later. Anyway, that was my message to this group.
So do you think it's possible to do that, but then stay true to your convictions on kind of, because I think that's where I think it's hard for folks to process is, well, if I give in, I'm going to be compromising who I am. My guess is that you've been able to do that over the years and still stay true to who you are as a person.
You got to be pliable. And if you're going to make decisions for the mass, if you're making a decision for just yourself, you can be true to everything to the nth degree and not budge. But once you're leading a city, or in Governor Dunleavy's case, a state, I'm not going to speak on his behalf, but for me, I had to look at it and be a little pliable. I could not be totally immovable in everything I was thinking. If you're totally immovable in every way, you're going to have a really hard time getting work done. Yeah. Right. So I was able to stay close to my convictions. Like, here's an example. I voted no on cannabis, and I know the cannabis dealers up here. I told them, I said, I'm going to vote no. And I lost that one, and I'm fine with that. So I worked with them, and they worked with me, and I visited their stores, and I was real polite. And, they're good business people, and I've come to respect a lot of them, but I still voted no. But I had to change my mode of thinking, at least when I'm working with them. If I ignored them or didn't, think they were valuable, then it would not have been a good relationship.
Yeah. And I think another prime example of that for a lot of folks in Alaska is a lot of people voted against ranked choice voting. You still got to get off your butt and go vote, because if you give up all hope just because something like that happens, man, it's not going to be a recipe for success. And so I love the point of, you're never going to get everything you want, but it's important that you keep showing up back up to the table and being willing to fight for what you believe in.
You cannot stop trying. I said this at the city. I can't please everyone, but it doesn't mean I can't quit trying. And 2 weeks ago, I spoke to a National Honor Society group of kids, and it was on Zoom. And there was like 20 of them. And I just told them, the 2 best things you can do to grow in your life are the 2 V's. And I use this as an example: volunteer and vote. If you volunteer your time, take the microscope off of you, or take the focus off of you, and on others, that will reward you. And then don't forget to vote. Just vote every time. And those are the 2 V's I leave for every group I talk to, because I do believe in voting. I do believe it helps. And I believe that if you don't vote, then you don't really have a voice. So I don't listen to the naysayers that say it doesn't matter. I believe it does. Yeah. So I will keep hammering that. Vote and then volunteer.
So one of the things that I saw recently in Fairbanks was the Polaris building is kind of coming down. I think it's in the early stages of taking it down. Talk to me about what that means for the city of Fairbanks. My guess is hopeful economic development, those kinds of things, but you probably know way more about this than I do. So fill me in.
It's a classic building. It's been around for a very long time. The city took possession of it about 3 or 4 years ago. And because the prior owner wasn't fixing it up, it was becoming more and more dilapidated. There's trees growing off the roof. There's poison inside of it. It's kind of our high rise, really. It's our biggest building downtown. And it's just infested with poison and asbestos and all sorts of chemicals. So you're right. The Polaris building got funding. We worked on funding. The current mayor, actually, after me, David Pruz, and his group, the Polaris group, worked on it exclusively. They got $10 million from Senator Murkowski's office to help us, because we just didn't have the funds to tear it down. It's going to be a $10 million project, because you got to take it from the top down, level by level by level. You're really
close.
Piece at
a time.
You do. You just can't implode that thing because it's so close to other businesses, right? So 2 weeks ago, I went over there for kind of the ceremonial breaking of it, because there's a small annex on the back of the main building. And that's coming down first. In fact, it's coming down now. So I hit it with a sledgehammer, kind of a ceremonial fun thing. And then the main takedown is going to be starting in the fall, September timeframe, take about 4 months. Now, when I was at the city, my goal was to always take it down, sell it to the private sector, and let them develop it. Yeah. Because I don't think you want government building anything there and running it. I don't think it can be that efficient. There's some things the city did well, but I don't think it should try to run a building. And so that was the plan. It'll be up to the new mayor, though, and the council to figure out what to do with it after it becomes raw land.
That's some prime time real estate, though, right? I mean, that's right in the hustle and bustle of Fairbanks.
It's the heart of downtown. The Polaris was the hub of everything for a very long time. Now, there's been some speculation about, a meeting like a little Denina Center Jr. going in there from Anchorage, but again, we've had a COVID outbreak since then. We've had a pandemic. We've had up and down, economic things. So I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be better to have it cleared and empty for now. And then the city should put it up for auction or sale and let someone develop it their own way.
I like that. So what, my next question to you is this, is you're a mayor that has literally performed tons of weddings. What's some advice that you give folks that you marry? I'm sure that, these young couples, you have some good conversations with them, some candid conversations with them. You're in a position probably different than most mayors in the whole state, where you're getting to speak into people's lives who are at a crossroads in their lives in a good way, getting married, and they're looking to the guy that's marrying them for maybe some advice. What's some advice that you give folks that's tried and true, as you're, sending folks off to experience a great married life?
It's going to be a cliche answer, but that's what I'm going to give you. Just for the sake of knowing my numbers, I've done this for 40 years now in Fairbanks. It's my 40th year DJing gigs. I've done over 3,500 weddings and receptions. Wow. And then I've done individual, just quick officiatings hundreds of times. And I always add my little flair to it. I say, just don't forget to laugh together. Laugh every day, laugh at each other, doesn't matter, laugh with each other, don't go to bed mad, and because you're not going to eliminate problems, but instead of a level 8 problems, just try to bring it down to a 2 if you can, because you can't eliminate everything. But just remember to laugh all the time, kiss every day, at least once, say good morning, say hello, and don't go to bed angry. And I kind of use those as a little guiding principle, I also think God's love will help you get through anything. And I think couples should pray together and attend church together. Those are my beliefs, of course. A lot of people aren't built that way. That's fine. Just at least laughing is universal, so everyone can agree on.
Everybody can agree on that one.
Watch some Seinfeld and just laugh together and treat each other as good friends and your most important person in your life. And that's kind of what I tell people. And I love doing it. It's a lot of fun for me.
That's awesome. So 20 minutes has gone by in a flash. Any last minute thoughts before we head off here?
We live in the greatest state, in the greatest country in the world. And don't let the online people tell you any differently. America as a whole, I'll just leave you with this. I learned this a long time ago. People knock America a lot, John. I say, look, America's made mistakes, but America itself is not a mistake. The way it was founded, the way it was presented, we're a very young country. We're a very young state. Let's just keep working together and not fight about it. Let's sit down in the same room, talk it out. Don't be on opposite ends so far that nothing gets done. Unless we come together and talk, nothing gets accomplished. So let's make friends the way little toddlers do. Let's just instantly get along and work together for the same goal.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us, former Mayor Jim Matherly. I really, really appreciate it. We wish you nothing but success. You are the perfect guy for the job up there in Fairbanks. We also want to thank our show sponsor, the University of Alaska. You can go check them out at empower.alaska.edu for more information. Thank you so much, University of Alaska, for sponsoring the Must Read Alaska show. We really, really appreciate it. And until next time, I'm John Quick from somewhere in Alaska. Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.